Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm gonna do part 3 of my reaction to the NES Godzilla creepypasta. Last time I left off like in an hour and 9 minutes, but I'm gonna start off at an hour and 8 minutes. That way, because why not?
Myself to stop playing. I don't know if it was the game messing with my mind or just my stubborn curiosity. But even with the previous revelation, I really wanted to see this through to the end. Even more than I did before I beat dementia. Terrifying as it might be, even dangerous, I knew that if I quit playing, I would never be able to stop thinking about it. If I tried to restart the game, it might go back to being normal again. How many people ever get to witness something like this firsthand, let alone be able to take screenshots of the whole thing? Fucked up as it was, this was the experience of a lifetime. But even so, I couldn't take any chances with my health. I had the TV remote right.
Oh yeah guys, also, sorry I'm not speaking that much, because normally in these reactions I don't speak that long. If I could show my fucking face, I would, show my face reaction. And yeah, let me just continue the video.
Next to me, ready to turn the TV off in case I felt I was in actual danger. And if that didn't work, I would pull the plug out of the wall, or just run out of the room. Sure enough, that would be enough. Whatever powers the game has, it seemed to be confined to what it can show on the TV, and whatever its mental connection could do. The latter was what worried me. I still didn't know what I was dealing with, so I wasn't about to underestimate it. I took a break for a few minutes to calm my nerves, and then it was back to the game. And speaking of TVs, there was a TV screen icon right below the white forest I had just left. And because the first animation was so bizarre, I figured I'd try another to see what happens. Although I expected the same animation, I actually got a totally different one.
What the fuck is that?
The music for
What
this
the
one
fuck
was
is
the
that?
Neptune board music. Fitting, I suppose, since it's a fish man after all. I can't help but wonder what the point of these things are. There was only one more TV icon, so I figured it must have a unique animation of its own. I was going to make sure to see what it was before I left Entropy. But then it was time for another level. The gold brick icon was the closest thing, so I went to that, and I started up in a gold labyrinth level. My health and power were refilled. Not sure how or why, but I was glad not to be heading in the unknown nearly dead. I also noticed that my Mothra sprite had shrunken to half its original size. The music was a slow, ominous drum beat, with female vocals kicking in about a minute into it. Quite haunting. The gold labyrinth itself was an anomaly. I'm not sure how this level would have played out if I were using Godzilla or Anguirus, because flying seems necessary just to get around this place. Another thing that caught my attention was that when you go left, your monster actually turns and faces the left. That sounds stupidly obvious, but in the original game, you were only supposed to move to the right. So when you tried to move left, your monster ended up walking or flying backwards. This level was apparently gigantic in size, because every time I thought I had reached an end to it, I was going to end up back where I started. I encountered something totally new. Things like lava blockades, new enemies, and statue faces. And I found one statue at a dead end with a wide open-eyed stare. The night Melissa died, she had an expression on her face that looked exactly like this the whole time.
The fuck?
Even when she got hit by a truck, she still had the same expression.
The
I
hell?
can't help but feel like something really is staring at me from behind the screen when I look at this.
That is so creepy.
I really didn't want to be reminded of that night anymore, so I left the statue almost as soon as I found it. I needed to find the exit anyway, which proved to be no simple task. It felt like this level stretched on forever in all directions. I must have wandered around the level for at least 15
Fucking
minutes
scared me.
before
It's
I
just a
finally saw
peacock
something.
fucking yelling again.
It was a creature that wasn't gold,
This peacock better shut
seemingly
the
the
fuck up.
only one of its kind in the level. any kind of hover ability like the other creatures. It just walked back and forth on the platform. But it wasn't long after I found it that a flying machine swooped down and grabbed it, and then flew off with it. The machine apparently had not seen me, so I decided to follow it, to see where it was taking the creature. The machine stopped at a room with a large cauldron-like object in the center. The machine hovered over the cauldron and dropped the creature into it. The creature emerged from a hole in the cauldron's side, now adorned in the same gold color as everything else. The machine flew off. I'm not sure what to make of this, but I'm glad I came upon it, because I found the exit soon after. When I got back to the board, I realized that the bosses haven't moved at all. A bit odd, but it didn't bother me. It made planning my route through Entropy easier. There were 2 new icons to explore, the Indigo Cliffs and a black version of the Labyrinth. Since there were only 3 black Labyrinth icons, which were surrounded by bosses, I played the Indigo Cliffs first. It was a lot like playing the Blue or Green Mountains. The level graphics had the same shredded look to it. There's also a recolor of the clouds and the moon from the toxic waste dump. The music, if you can call it that, was merely a deep rumbling noise. One of the first things I encountered was these multicolored creatures with big heads
The
emerging from a
fuck?
small cave in the ground. They all made a synchronized shaking sound, and they walked to the right in a group after emerging from the cave, ignoring me. Having no other way to go, I followed them on their route. More and more emerged from the cave until the group had about 100 creatures. Eventually, the pathway ended in a cliff. I was shocked to see that upon reaching the cliff, all the creatures began jumping off into the abyss. I've seen enemies walk off cliffs before, but I've never seen NPCs commit mass suicide like this. Very unsettling to start off a level. I continued on, flying over various stage animals like the ones shown here.
Well, T-Rex.
Another group of multicolored bobbleheads were jumping up and down, only to be snatched up by large birds, which I'm fairly certain are sprite versions of the giant condor from Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster.
AKA
I defeated some of the condors in battle, but it bothered me that these bobbleheads seem to be so eager to die. If the game itself is alive, perhaps the creatures in these levels are also alive? And some have very unhappy lives, if this behavior is any indication. But what provokes them to do this? In the back of my mind, I also suspect that the glowing moon in the sky is the reason. At the end of the level, I saw yet another group of bobbleheads marching up to a large monster and being devoured. This was starting to disgust me, so acting on impulse, I fired off eye beams at both the monster and the bobbleheads. I destroyed the cave. The monster became angry and ran through the remaining bobbleheads to fight me. Although it lacked any ranged attacks, it was relentless, but it was no match for me. I was in the home stretch now. Up to the bosses, my plan was going through Batra first, then Megalon. After that, I would watch the last TV screen, play the Black Labyrinth before fighting Mechagodzilla, and lastly, go through the chase with the Hell Beast. I was curious to see if it would be in a new form again. But first things first, it was time to beat up Batra. As expected, he started off in his larva form. The music was Varen's battle theme. Whenever the game puts in a new Godzilla kaiju with more than one form, that other form always shows up. For a game that's otherwise inexplicable, it's rather startling with its consistency and accuracy with the new kaiju bosses. The fight started off simple. Larva Batra fought in a similar fashion as Magma did, charging back and forth and occasionally firing off lightning from its horn. During the battle, I noticed that Mothra's combat capabilities have been altered in my favor. The eye beams did twice as much damage as they did originally. Now they were as strong as Godzilla's punches. The poison powder was simply improved. It also did this nice thing where it would actually hit an enemy when you use it. In the original game, even though Mothra could fly, she was unable to fly over an opponent. You would get knocked back the same way as if you just ran straight into them, which was extremely annoying.
Bruh.
Not anymore. I could change direction and fly around, which was a big help, because fighting Imago Batra was much like fighting a clone Mothra, although Batra is distinctly faster and stronger. No longer impeded by its slow-moving larva form, Imago Batra was a fearsome opponent. Although it lacked the horn lightning, it now had a new, more powerful eye beam. Batra could change direction just like I could, so this battle involved a lot of flapping and flying around. It was pretty damn fun, to be honest. So after defeating Batra, I was excited to see what Megalon would be like.
No,
But
Megalon's
first, I
gonna be
went through
dick.
an Indigo Cliffs level and shot through a lot of creatures for health power-ups. So about Megalon, his music was Gigan's theme. Makes sense since Gigan was his battle partner in Megalon's one, and so far only, film appearance. He was a lot like Mogira, but faster and with more weapons. He'd start off charging off with his drills.
The movies.
I like to fly back and forth around him, which seems to really annoy him. After a few seconds, he'd step back, turn around, and start spitting out grenades.
Oh, movie
paid
reference
because
from
they bounce when
movies.
they hit the ground.
Also, like I said, sorry, I'm not saying that much. I'm mostly quiet, and yeah.
Lastly, it started spamming his lightning beam. It only went straight forward, so it was easy to duck under and then shoot him with eye beams.
Imagine that being annoying. If it could go, like if still went straight or down, it would still damage you. That would just be annoying. Awesome.
Overall, I describe him as strong and persistent, but dumb. I was now nearing the end of Entropy. I had just taken down Megalon, and I started up the last TV screen to see what I'd get this time.
It's red, isn't
The
it?
result was unpleasant. The music of this gruesome scene was the password theme.
The hell?
I couldn't figure out why this animation was so sinister and violent in comparison to the other two. The whole game seemed to be growing more benevolent. As I went on to finish Entropy, I began to feel drained. It's hard to describe, like I had suddenly became tired when I wasn't before. Most likely it was just the tension from all that has been happening with the game getting to me, but who knows. The last level type on Entropy is what I call the Shadow Labyrinth. The scenery was recolored from gold to black. The music was an evil ambience, similar to the unforgiving Cold Loop, but distinctly different. The music was my first sign that this level was going to be distressing. I traveled through the maze for about a minute, and I noticed that there weren't any creatures hovering around. It was an odd transition from the Gold Labyrinth, which was overrun with creatures, to this level that had nothing at all. But then this might be a good thing. Maybe there wouldn't be any obstacles, and I could get through the level with ease. Then the screen went dark. And immediately I snapped out of my daze for a few seconds earlier. Everything had been darkened so that the only thing I could see was the Mothra sprite. I couldn't tell where I was going, and I ended up frantically running into walls. I heard a noise, the sound of a crowd running through a hallway. And along with the running came the roars. Loud, roaring sounds, which I could describe as something like a rabid dog the size of an elephant, screaming with fury. And I could tell that whatever was making this noise, there were lots of them. I knew there was something there, but it wasn't until I did some screen cap editing that I got to see what my pursuers looked like. But at the time, I couldn't see where they were, or where I was going. I was literally running blind, and this mob of beasts eventually caught up with me. All I could think was, "No!" as I saw my life bar rapidly declining. The monsters had taken me down to half of my total health when I was saved. The light came back on, and the attackers had disappeared. And so, the challenge of this level was revealed. Find the exit before the lights go out, and a pack of monsters maul you to death. I was in panic mode now, moving as fast as I could, while trying every path I could find for a way out. As I played through the level, the lights went out a total of 3 times. The second time, I would have been dead meat had it not been for one of the wide-eyed statues. As I stayed close to it, the monsters seemed to all avoid me until the light came back. The statue warded them away somehow. I was safe as long as I stayed near the statue, but at the same time I had to leave to find the exit. The Shadow Labyrinth turned out to be much smaller than the Gold Labyrinth, as it only took about 6 minutes to navigate to the end. But before the exit, there was a row of halls leading straight down, with no way out once entered. You either go to the exit before the monsters reach you, or you died. Thankfully, I made it out. Only one more boss, Godzilla. I started the battle and got something unexpected. Not only did my life shoot back up to 100% again, it seems to do that randomly, but instead of a replacement boss, I was fighting Godzilla. But any Godzilla fan worth their salt can figure this out. Godzilla started off like fighting a clone Godzilla, but his disguise burned away after only 3 life bars. Usually a transformation only occurred at the halfway point. At this point, it was like fighting Godzilla in the normal game. Felt kinda nice to fight one of the original game enemies for a change. Although he wasn't exactly like normal. He also had a rainbow beam and finger missiles. This prevented me from doing the old trick of backing him in the corner and hitting him with eye beams in the spot where he
I'm gonna be
can't.
honest with you, Blues has out the rainbow eyes and the finger missiles in the movies. But if he's talking about the original game, then yeah, I can get that. But in the movie,
Hit me. But that was always a cheap trick anyways. But after getting him down to half his health, something weird's starting to happen. His sprite started to glitch in much the same way as Godzilla had way back in the first world.
looks
After a
like he's
few
getting
seconds,
Thanos
the
snapped.
glitches began to form a new shape, and thus the game had created not Godzilla.
Bruh.
And I discovered that this visual glitch was somehow related to the game recreating things. The human face on this one gave it a very uncanny look. It was one of the stronger replacement monsters and had the most firepower. Pictured here is its mouth beam, which I got caught in the middle of. Even though it was a bit stronger, it was also slower than its original counterpart and couldn't jump around as much. I won the fight by constantly staying out of its line of fire, bombarding the machine with poison powder as I flew over it. One less thing to do. The Hellbeast chase. Oh boy.
That's red.
I might as well just get this over with, I thought. The Entropy End chase ended up being exactly what I was afraid it would be. A labyrinth level. All the other chases, although difficult, were extremely straightforward. You just had to run to the right and not get touched. But this took all the simplicity out of it. There was no telling how big this labyrinth would be, or where the exit was. And now, not only did I have to constantly backtrack to find my way out, I also had to avoid getting one hit killed by the red monster. And for those first 30 seconds, it didn't show up, but I knew it would. And as I started to pick up the pace, I heard a loud flapping noise. And there it was, in a flying form.
It's
It
red.
flew with bat-like wings and was as fast and relentless as ever. For reasons already stated, this was probably the most nerve-wracking of all the end chases, and as such, I had to keep my focus on the game and not take screen caps. However, I did take one of the red monster doing something I found very interesting. I had managed to lose it by going through a different path than it apparently expected, and it was blocked from attacking me by one of the organic walls of the red labyrinth. Or so I thought. It tried clawing through the wall for a second before it opened its mouth and tearing the wall apart with its intestine jaws. But for those brief milliseconds that the monster was held back might have been the key to me finding the exit. The path to exit was long and complex, but from what I remember, I went up and then back towards the left. I'm still not sure why I chose that particular way. Just a lucky hunch, I suppose. I was sweating profusely. but my luck has saved me yet again. I hoped that it wouldn't run out before I finished the game. There were only 2 more worlds to go. Next was the penultimate world, called Extus.
Next chapter or something? Yeah, chapter 6.
In the brief instant before the transition between Entropy and Extus, I was hoping that I would get Godzilla and Anguirus back. As the board appeared, I saw that my wish was half granted. I had Godzilla back, but no Anguirus. I would have preferred both, but despite Anguirus' neat abilities, I would have chosen Godzilla if I had to pick between the two. Extus had 2 different colored temples, white and pink, a pyramid, what looked like some modern buildings, and 2 other icons I couldn't figure out at the time.
Ghidorah,
The new
Kumonga, and
bosses were
Gorosaurus.
Kumonga, Gorosaurus, and not Ghidorah, whom I was dreading to see, let alone fight. With Godzilla back, I was excited again and eager to explore, yet still cautious. I went to the quiz level first, just as before. This time, Face's questions were more random than ever. Do elephants breathe? Yes. Have you ever been molested by a family member? No. Have you ever raped anyone? No.
What the
Is
fuck?
green your favorite color? No. Is the computer the pinnacle of modern technology? Yes. Are you a tough guy? Yes. Can you fly? No. Can you stand on your head? Yes. Do you hate raccoons? No. Do you feel blame? No. Would you like a new monster? Yes. Will you miss me? Yes. I was happy that I was getting a new monster, but that last question bothered me. Will you miss me? Is Face referring to when I finish the game? I thought. Since the revelation of the game's truly otherworldly nature, I wasn't sure what to think of Face, or anything else in the game. But something about that last statement gave me a genuine feeling of sadness from Face. As I was thinking
What
about
was
this,
that?
the game had gone back to the board. I had a new monster, but I had no idea who it was supposed to be. The sprite had a slight resemblance to Rodan, but the head was totally off. I moved this mysterious newcomer to a white temple icon and started the level. When I started the level, this screen appeared with the text, "Find the gem," presumably instructions for beating the level. After that, I got my first look at my new playable monster, a hairy dark blue creature with bat wings and a skull-like face named Solomon. And I also found that my path was blocked by a beam of light and a small pillar with a plate on it. I figured that this beam of light was blocking the exit, so I had to find the gem and drop it on the plate to deactivate the beam. How exactly I was going to do that, I didn't know. There wasn't anything in the original game requiring you to find an item to beat a level. I'd have to find out when I obtained the gem. The only direction I had to go was left, so on I proceeded.
I'm just wondering if Fred's just gonna appear on these levels and going to the final level. I'm just wondering.
Solomon was an interesting monster, to say the least. He was capable of both flight and a heat beam, both of which proved to be very useful. He could also kick and slash with his wings, but he couldn't duck. The White Temple's music was a vocalizing choir, or a video game approximation of such. It's hard to describe, but it had a very holy sound to it. It wasn't long before I started running into waves of strange new enemies. They did little to stop me. I ran past them while slashing and didn't take any damage. There was a pause between each wave of enemies. After you have killed about 10, there wouldn't be any for about a minute. Then the next wave would appear. After 5 minutes, I noticed holes in the floor and ceiling. Guillotine-mouthed creatures were rapidly flying up and down these crevices, so I had to time my jumps carefully, because I didn't know if I'd get another shot at this. Luckily, I managed to get through without a scratch. I'm just lucky, I guess. After that, I found myself at the end of the hallway, facing some kind of mini-boss monster. It moved very fast and had some kind of projectile that it shot in 4 directions, but I killed it quite easily using Solomon's heat beam. When the battle was over, I had my gem, which was inside the creature's head.
What was that thing?
I found that I could pick it up and hold the gem by
Yep.
walking over to it and holding down B. I made the long trek back to the start, deposited the gem on the plate, which deactivated the beam. I left the stage and was shown what was probably the strangest quirk relating to the Solomon monster. Every time you complete a